Mr. Speaker, there is an ancient story about Rwanda, and it is one that a number of meanings can be extracted. We are here today because we do remember the victims of the horrific events in our world's history, and we honor survivors and recognize the steps that have been taken to remedy the atrocities that have occurred. Over and over, you will hear people on this floor, Mr. Speaker, say that things that have happened in our history that were horrific and inhuman shall never happen again. American slavery, European extermination, mainly by Germany, of Jews throughout Europe, they shall never happen again. And so we must continue to fight for justice as the international issues come to our consciousness. And we know that as time moves on, there will be additional tragedies around the globe. Rwanda has certainly experienced its share, if not more than its share, of tragedy. This ancient parable in Rwandan is Amane Ya'ara Ahandi Agrathai, which means God spends the day elsewhere, but he sleeps in Rwanda. For those of us who are familiar with the creation story, we know that God worked for 6 days and then rested. The Rwandan people believe that God on the seventh day came to Rwanda to rest from his work the previous 6 days. Rwanda is 1 mile above sea level, about what Denver, Colorado is. And because of its elevation, Rwanda is paradisical in the sense that the climate is cooler in Rwanda than it is in many of the other parts of Africa, certainly sub-Saharan Africa. And the greenery is like that of no other place in Africa, and it will rival even some of the beautiful spots in the Caribbean. It is also a fabulous place, the Rwandans thought, for God to come to rest. Well, in a country of 7 million, at least in 1994, who knows what the population is today after many of the atrocities, but the people believed that God could rest there in this beautiful, this lush, very, very receiving and welcoming land without being interrupted. Now, all cultures, all religions choose to elevate its land or its people. For example, the Jewish people understandably refer to the Sea of Galilee as a sea. For those who know geography, you know that the Sea of Galilee is actually a lake. The Jordan River, before I went there for the first time back in 1994, I envisioned the Jordan River something comparable to the Mississippi River or something comparable to the Missouri River, which is about 2,000 miles across the country. The truth of the matter is there were certain points of the Jordan River that I actually jumped over. And it flows down into the Sea of into the Dead Sea, which is again not a sea but another lake. And so it is understandable that people will declare something to be a little more than it really is. And so the Rwandan people, believing that God came to their country, this paradise 1 mile above sea level, was something that I think many of us would have done had we been Rwandans. I also know that there were people who would question how could God sleep in a place with all of the genocide that has taken place there, with all of the violence against men and women and children, and even violence based on tribal ethnicity. But the Rwandan people still believe that God sleeps in their country. I believe that God sleeps in Rwanda, but I also believe that He is awakened because of what has happened. God can neither sleep nor slumber where there is injustice, where there is wrong, where there is murder. And so God has had an unrestful amount of time, unrestful nights in Rwanda since the beginning of the great genocide. 800,000 people, Mr. Speaker, mostly ethnic Tutsis and moderate Hutus, died at the hand of Hutu extremists during a 100-day period. A 100-day period. That would be killing all of the people of my hometown of Kansas City, Missouri, the largest city in our state, and all the people 221 miles away in St. Louis. Both cities would be completely exterminated if they lost 800,000 people. But the Rwandan people lost 800,000 people in 100 days. That's 7 individuals, 7 human beings created by God, murdered every 7 minutes. 10,000 victims were killed each day. Just think about it. 10,000 human beings created with the hands of the alms-giving God. And then someone stole their lives for something as petty as ethnicity, something as petty as a different language. And so when you think about hundreds of thousands of victims who were murdered, there are hundreds of other thousands of victims who were infected with HIV as the Hutu extremists raped as a tool of violence women and young girls. The killing ended once Tutsi rebel forces attacked and retook the country. When I think about what we've done and what we've spent in lands around the world to tragedies no less repulsive, I have to raise the question, why has the United States been asleep lo these many years? I think that our children and our children's children will look back on the 90s in particular and wonder, where were the Americans? Where was the United States when all of this happened? Now, 20 years after all of the genocide, Rwanda has moved stunningly in a new and positive direction. And I am very pleased that they have, and all Americans should be pleased, but there still is much work to be done. I would like to yield, Mr. Speaker, to Mr. Welch at this time, at such time as he may consume.
I appreciate you doing this. You know, it's just staggering to think about what happened. And all of those people going about their daily lives 20 years ago, on April 7th, and knowing the loved ones are going to die. And it's so unspeakable that I can't really imagine what it would be like to live in that country, to live in a neighborhood